This is a Let's Talk Church Safety and Security microsode with your host, Paul Buckner.
Hey Sheepdogs, I want to talk about training with our gear, the gear that we carry, the gear that we're going to use. And I know it's easy to talk about, well, obviously I go and train with my firearm, and I hope you do. The average American doesn't shoot 50 rounds a year, owns quite, several guns, and I don't know how many times I've gone to range trainings and people want to give me half a box of ammo, which I happily take. But, I have an ammunition problem. But anyway, I tend to shoot it. But so people will, oh yeah, well you need to obviously go out and train with your firearm. Have you ever used a fire extinguisher? If you've got a fire extinguisher that's being rotated out at your church, or talk to your local fire department, maybe they've got some that are out of date. A lot of times people give out of date fire extinguishers. You can actually, in talking to your fire department, I've actually worked with a couple of fire departments now that they will take you out and have special training days where you work with a partner. They're watching your back, and you actually go up to put out a fire. They actually have a gas powered setup in my area, and they light it and you blow it out. They cut the gas to it, and so it's something they can rinse and repeat and keep doing. Knowing in the moment and having to adapt to that learning curve under pressure, under all that stress, while your adrenaline's spiking and people are screaming, not something you want to do. So you want to get out there and use a fire extinguisher, and you want to know what your bandages look like. Something I experienced in the academy that meant a lot to me, because psychologically a lot of people think if you're shot, you're out of the fight, and they think that if you've got a tourniquet on, you're done. Is we actually had an instructor. It was something that was endorsed by the academy. He came in with a revolver with 22 blanks in it, and I actually pinged him. I knew something was wrong, and I knew he wouldn't shoot us. But I saw him do a draw stroke behind a little podium in our classroom, and fired, I'm assuming, a half dozen blanks. It was in rapid succession, obviously into the floor, but it's clapping off the walls around you, and it was very startling. I knew something was up because I saw that draw stroke. I recognized that shoulder movement. And so I was actually leaning to my left and starting to move my hand up to my ear, because all I could think is, we didn't have protective gear on our faces. He wasn't going to shoot us with some kind of projectile, but I figured blanks, and I guessed right. Well, after everybody's jarred, there's, 17, 18 of us in the classroom at that moment. We're all startled and jarred. He says, every one of you's been shot in the right leg. Put your tourniquet on and run around the basement. And the basement that we had was this big rectangle, had classrooms and labs and stuff up the middle. And so we had to put our tourniquet on, and you couldn't feel your pulse, is how tight you had to put it, for obvious reasons, right? And then we had to run, very Hopalong Cassidy, kind of dating myself, I guess, but we had to run around the outside, around the basement. And I forget what it was. If it was a lap, it felt like an eternity because it did not feel good. But if you ever have an opportunity to take a trainer, buy a cheap knockoff tourniquet for this, because you really shouldn't be reusing tourniquets, right? As in that training, buy a trainer, buy a cheap one, something, and actually put it on your arm, ratchet it all the way down, do this in your training, and shoot. Try to run with it on, because so what happens, because I'm not going to be out of the fight if I can help it. Unless I've got a bullet in my head or something, and even then, if I'm still kicking, I'm still kicking, right? But I'm not trying to talk about false bravado, but we can set ourselves up for failure, like I'm out of the fight, and you don't have to be. That's a mental decision. And obviously there's things that can hurt us bad enough that we're out of the fight. I guess I'm trying to be careful how I say this, but if I'm still capable of being in the fight, I want to be in the fight. So if I need to bandage myself, if I need to throw a tourniquet around the limb and get back in the fight, I was privileged to get the opportunity to do mag changes and shoot while wearing a tourniquet, one on each arm, back and forth, and having to run with that on my leg. And he would just randomly, our medical, he's a paramedic, our medical instructor, as he's teaching us all this trauma stuff, he would just randomly stop the class and go, every one of you has been shot in the left arm, and tourniquet now. And then he would check to see that you put it on right. And if you didn't put it on tight enough or in the right place, you had to do it again. Well, you don't want to have to figure out that learning curve in the moment, because if you don't get the tourniquet on tight enough on yourself or someone else, they can still sanguinate, they can still bleed to death. So Another thing is glass breakers. I was privileged probably 8 or 10 years ago to have the opportunity to go out and actually use a glass breaker on, and I got to thinking about that. I'm not sure if it's laying here next to me or what. Yeah. So I actually had the opportunity to go out and use a glass breaker, and I now have one that's actually part of a set of medical shears. But you've got different styles of them out there, and I upgraded from this. It's not bad. It's not that it's a bad piece of equipment, but is the knife that you have, is its glass breaker? If you have a glass breaker on it, I'm not a big fan of them on my knife. I tend to bang my hand on that stuff going in and out of my pocket. But is your glass breaker actually capable of breaking glass? There's quality problems. There's knockoff problems. You know, gas station knives does not make a good glass breaker. And so breaking the glass at the bottom corner, the first time I did it, I bruised the snot out of my arm because I reached up and I successfully broke it right in the middle of the window. A lot of people think that a baton will break glass, or you watch movies where people do like like an atomic elbow into a window or something, or they punch it. It's happened, but I've seen guys take ball peen hammers and unsuccessfully break windows. There's a lot of flex in the outside of the window, and the window's designed to resist that. So actually using your glass breaker and actually using your seatbelt cutter, which I would recommend something much more like either make sure you've got a really top shelf, high quality seatbelt cutter, or actually having a pair of medical shears handy that'll go through it and test it. And I'm not saying go to your wife's car, to your spouse's car, to your car, your mom's car, whatever. I'm not saying doing that, but a lot of times if you know a salvage yard, you have a good relationship with a salvage yard, you can say, hey, do you have anything that's going to go to the crusher? There are companies that do like wrecker companies and so forth, that when people don't want that car back, it was rolled 3 times, they don't want it back, they're going to take it and they're going to have it crushed. Are their windows intact in it? Are the seatbelts intact in it? Buckle the seatbelt, get it locked in tight, and say, hey, how would you like to make $20 more off this vehicle? I'll sign a waiver. And I've done it. And these guys and gals are business people. They're entrepreneurs. I would like to make $20 more off this vehicle before I go have it crushed. What do you have in mind? They may say no, but the worst thing that may happen is they say no. I haven't had that happen yet. And just say, hey, it's something that I really feel like I need to know how to do, because I feel that first responder responsibility I want to take care of my family, I want to take care of my church, and if something happens, I want to know, are my tools going to work? And I would much rather have a tool fail during training. If you've ever heard me talk, you probably heard me say that. I'd much rather have a tool or a technique fail during training and go, oopsies, I need something better. And then, because price is not always the thing, quality is a big deal, but what is it that's actually going to make the difference? So getting out and training with your actual equipment, and it's things that you may not think about, that do these things actually keep a door from opening? Do I know how to use this piece of equipment? Because in the moment you don't have time, and you might be able to overcome the learning curve. It's possible, but why not have it done in advance? Keeping yourself sharp and keeping your team sharp, and it breaks up the monotony of some of the training. And so that's my thought for today. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you. And remember to keep your powder dry. Keep yourself and your equipment in good working order, and know how to use it. God bless.
If you enjoyed this microsode, check out the video and audio versions of the Let's Talk Church Safety and Security podcast.